Coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studio, this is Talking Politics, and I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, top 100 Latino for the third consecutive year via the Latino Spirit Online magazine, certainly the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media, and without a doubt, the people's choice and the people's voice. Yes, it's me, Fernando Uribe. Hope you have a wonderful April, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I've talked about it repeatedly on this program, as well as my other media brands, about the disservice that the liberal media does to New Jersey residents every single day. And we all know who the guilty parties are, whether it's NJ.com, the Star Ledger, NJ Spotlight News, certainly the Bergen Record, NorthJersey.com, and especially Insider NJ. And I can't think of one publication that exemplifies sort of like the ongoing bitching and moaning that has really become, I think, sort of commonplace in what used to be a pretty credible news site. And as we all know, the New Jersey Globe absolutely destroys all of the aforementioned, not so much in traffic, not only in that, but more importantly in content and in credibility as well as accuracy. But one of the things you could always rely on when it comes to Insider NJ is the amount of virtue signaling and this perpetual victimhood that seems to be, repetitive as often as possible. And I've talked about it not just only on this show, but my other programs, about sort of the ongoing sob stories we get to hear from, the virtue signaler, obviously there, Jay Lassiter, but more importantly now, folks, that sort of move around the Lollipop Guild, and that comprises Insider NJ. And let's move on now to Anjali Malhotra, who is the former president of the National Organization for Women New Jersey chapter, and certainly probably one of the more insufferable feminists you'll ever have the displeasure of having to interact with. Now, I've interviewed this winner on multiple occasions, and to say that it's required every ounce of patience, A, not to bust out laughing, or B, to not lose my mind, would be a profound understatement. But occasionally she'll submit a column to Insider NJ, and again, she fits in there perfectly, right? Bitching and moaning about sort of, the usual victimhood and other virtue signaling type of topics that those on the left live and die on. But this one really got my attention recently as I was browsing the news feeds, again, within the New Jersey media echo chamber. Now, she published a column called Why Wait? New Jersey Needs Pay Transparency Now. Okay, so I'll sort of read you a little bit from this column here just to, obviously, I don't want to put you to sleep. If you need a cure for insomnia, you can always rely on her columns to do that. But there's a method to the madness here, so just bear with me. So she writes, for far too long, women and minorities have been left behind in an ever-widening wealth gap. New Jersey has a chance to narrow the gap through equitable hiring practice regulations. Assemblyman Paul Moriarty and his pay transparency bill, titled A3937, as well as Assemblywoman Brittany Timberlake's similar bill, would require employers to disclose, quote, hourly wage or salary or a range of the compensation, end quote, with each job posting. This saves time for both potential candidates and hiring managers, as only applicants who find the compensation level satisfactory will then apply for the position. More importantly, it prevents the common practice of shortchanging new hires based on race, gender, immigration status, or some other protected class. Now, again, why Anjali? I don't know, maybe she's heard of Indeed or other job posting sites, or even the New Jersey Department of Personnel. All this information is out there. So when you're applying for any type of position, right, whether it's classified, non-classified, instructional, non-instructional, that information's on there. Okay? I would think that Anjali, with all the bloviating that she does online, that she at least take the moment to go, to any local job site and be able to, at least in my opinion, be able to just, type in certain job titles, and then subsequently, guess what? Well, she'll find what she's looking for. But again, it's interesting about her wanting more government involvement. And what's really rich about Anjali is that, she can't really decide from day to day when she wants government involvement in her life or in the life of others. Like, sweetheart, you got to make a decision here. Okay? You either want government involved in every aspect of your life or you don't, right? Unfortunately, you can't just go and pick and choose when it's convenient for your narrative, right? When it's convenient for whatever nonsense you're peddling. And in this column, obviously, and I'll get to more of it, it just seems like you're looking for an excuse to point the finger where, quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, information when it comes for job seekers and employers is readily available. Why we need again, overkill by the state legislature. I mean, again, it just boggles my mind. But again, for someone like Anjali Malhotra, right, and the rest of the Lollipop Guild and Insider NJ that all subscribe to these leftist policies, because that's what they are, full-blown leftists, it would seem that, hey, you know what, let's have more government intrusion into our lives or into the hiring practices of the private and public sector. But more on that later. Now, the bill was up for discussion in the Assembly Labor Committee last month, but did not receive a vote to move it out of committee. Powerful lobby interests such as the New Jersey Business and Industry Association are asking lawmakers to take, quote, a little bit of a wait-and-see approach. They have cited improper implementation in states that have passed similar bills as a concern. If they are truly worried about employers posting ranges that are too large or frivolous, the bill can be amended to require a good faith clause as found in the ordinance already adopted by the city of Jersey City. However, the real reason seems to be that employers perceive the accountability measures outlined in the bill as a threat, as evidenced from the response from the Chamber of Commerce in Southern New Jersey. And of course, she goes on to put this in bold print. The fact that industry lobbyists are proposing that there be no consequences for noncompliance should be a red flag for all. No, Anjali, again, let me give you a little bit of education here, honey, because it seems like, again, you would rather peddle this perpetual victimhood, which you're really good at, by the way, okay, or just the ongoing virtue signaling. I've interviewed the president of the NJBIA, okay, and Michelle Sakurka, let me tell you something, is one of the more well-rounded, educated, proactive women when it comes to talking about the business climate in New Jersey and what's best for businesses. The idea that you want to call out her organization as maybe, I don't know, being disingenuous or not really caring about workers is a blatant lie. And again, if I didn't know you better, I would say, Anjali, you're better than this. But we all know you're not. So again, you'd rather peddle this nonsense when it comes to this BS article. And more on why there really isn't a pay gap in a moment. Okay? Now, of course, she goes on to, again, her usual virtue signaling. Discriminatory practices in hiring, such as inquiring about salary history and salary expectation, work in favor of employers and increase pay disparity for women and for minorities. In February of 2018, in one of his first executive orders, the Emperor, aka Governor Phil Murphy, outlawed the practice of asking job applicants for salary history. That law took effect in 2020. By requiring employers to post compensation and wages, New Jersey will take the next step towards achieving pay equity. Well, this is what's really funny. And again, we look at someone like Anjali Malhotra, who can't figure out day to day, as I said, about when she wants government involvement in people's lives or in the lives of employers. Whether it's the NJBIA or the Chamber of Commerce of Southern New Jersey, what they're concerned with, right, is making sure that businesses can thrive, that they're going about hiring the best people possible. Now, again, when it comes to having information readily available, okay, about wages and compensation, everything else that goes into it, that's all there, folks. This just seems like her wanting to just sort of tuck and pull at whatever strings she can in Trenton to make sure that her voice is heard, okay? And again, she's one of these individuals that will scream about inequity for women when it comes to compensation in the workplace and everything else, and more on that in a moment. But it just seems like, again, for someone that can even tell you exactly what the definition of a woman is, I don't need to be a biologist to know, but I've taken enough biology classes that I can say, if someone asks me what a woman is, I can just say very simply, it's an adult human female. She probably won't be able to do that because she'd rather engage in semantics and pander and deflect because, again, she has to acquiesce to a certain political party and, more importantly, a certain liberal and radical wing of that party that she's a member of, okay? But again, this goes beyond politics. This goes into basic common sense and being able to look up labor statistics and labor information. Now, what was really interesting about this really poor excuse of a column was in the comment section. I was about to comment on her section when it came to this poor excuse, again, of a column for Insider NJ. But the guy or girl, whoever wrote this, beat me to it. And I have to tell you, it was probably the best column response I've ever seen. And of course, Anjali won't respond to it because she can't. She's not going to have the facts on her side. But this commentator did. So I'll read you sort of what was written here, and I think it's beautiful. The gender pay gap is nonsense. Women do not go into high-risk jobs like nuclear engineering, petroleum engineering, chemical engineering, or even being carpenters, electricians, or plumbers. Significantly more women are graduating college than men. That's great. You should be applauding this, Angela, but instead you would rather bitch and moan and virtue signal like you usually do. Women are voluntarily, and that's a really important word here, taking jobs like teaching, social work, working in psychology, and similar professions. Why women and men go into different careers is this biological as well as a sociological choice. Men are built differently than women, both physically and mentally. That's not being misogynist, that's not being sexist, that's not being discriminatory. Those are facts. Angeli, if you took and passed high school biology at some point, you would know that. Okay? For example, college graduated women in their 20s living in the West Coast or East Coast cities, for example, Los Angeles, New York City, DC, or Miami, usually out-earn college graduated men in their 20s by a rate of 17 to 20%. Once again, that's great. You should be applauding that. That's what you should be writing about, Angeli, not this virtue signaling nonsense. Then women get married and leave the workforce to raise children. Okay, that's cool. That's obviously a lot of what we strive for, right? Male incomes then start to skyrocket as they build their careers because they are the ones going out there, not staying home for the most part, and pursuing their careers, degrees, whatever, promotions. The myth of a pay gap is just that. It's a myth. Women voluntarily choose their careers and their life paths. According to a number of studies, the pay gap is really about 9%. However, since men take more dangerous and high-pressure jobs overall when it comes to being crushed, mutilated, electrocuted, and mangled at work, or higher rates of heart attacks and strokes, or other lifestyle diseases, men are indeed at a distinct disadvantage. Most backbreaking, obviously, is the lethally dangerous jobs. For example, a roofer, a logger, a coal miner, just to name a few. They're all done by men, not by women. That's why men are paid more. They do the more dangerous and high-pressure jobs. Not to say some women don't, but the majority, if not entirely, are made up of men. For example, the Labor Department, again, this, Angeli would make better use of her time going on Google, using her mouse, clicking on a browser and looking up this information, which is readily available in the Department of Labor. Recently reported that nearly 5,000 American workers die from workplace accidents each year. That's 90% more than 4,400. And of them, they are male. We are often reminded that only 24 women are CEOs. Again, Angeli Malhotra and all these other insufferable feminists and cat ladies in New Jersey politics will remind you, right? Whether it's Angeli Malhotra, whether it's Susan Aaron Chung, whatever her name is, from the Women for Progress organization, Make the Road New Jersey, Planned Parenthood, take your pick, folks. Okay? The New Jersey Alliance for Illegals Justice, or Coddling Illegals, whatever it's called, right? I mean, again, these are all organizations, right, primarily made up by a lot of insufferable feminists that won't tell you these stats, but I will. Okay? We're often reminded again that only 24 women in the country are CEOs of usually the Fortune 500. But what about how about the unfortunate 4,400 men I just cited based on labor studies? See, no one cares about that. Angeli would rather cry you a river and go boo-hoo about the pay gap. There is no pay gap. Men, by and large, take more dangerous jobs. Okay? Many women choose to get married and stay at home with their kids. That's awesome. That's great. I applaud that. Okay? I'm Hispanic, believe me. I'm looking for a woman to be able to, be at home, take care of my babies. Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing misogynistic about that. There's nothing, sexist about that. That's just a cultural thing. And you know what? I want to be the provider. That's not a big deal. But for women that choose to stay home, it's because they're choosing to do that. If they're choosing to go into professions that are as dangerous as men, they're choosing to do that. No one's forcing them. No one's putting a gun to their head and saying, oh, you have to be a social worker, or you have to be a first grade teacher, or you have to teach STEM at some high school. No, of course not. Women are choosing to do this. Many women are choosing not to pursue dangerous professions. Men are. And guess what? Because of that, they should be paid more. But again, someone like Angeli Malhotra, who'd rather bitch and moan about the ongoing myth of a pay gap, would rather tell you otherwise. And again, folks, this is the ongoing disservice that you see all the time from news sites like Insider NJ, The Star Ledger, NJ Spotlight News, because they'd rather virtue signal and evoke victimhood than actually get to the facts, which again, on this show, as well as my other media programs, do all the time. And you know what? I'm tired of doing everybody's job, but you know what? I'm more than qualified to do that. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. And now some local stories for your consideration. And once again, thank you to John Hines, the editor and publisher of the Hudson County View, for his exceptional reporting on this story. Now, recent gubernatorial candidate and current mayor of Jersey City, Stephen Fulop, laid out 3 reasons why he decided to jump into the 2025 gubernatorial race. Now, Mayor Fulop went out to say in a statement earlier the week, quote, "I'm fully aware that critics will say it's too early or it's too this or too that. So I figured I would answer the question directly with an explanation. There are a couple of reasons that drove this decision. First, if the foundation for my candidacy is a platform to meaningfully improve New Jersey, then it must be a platform that is based on honesty with you as a voter. That means not being cagey or disingenuous on whether I'm running or not. If I know in my heart I'm running for the right reasons, then it serves us both to be clear and direct when I am certain," right? A little bit more on this, which I think is pretty interesting. Now, the 3-term mayor said that this was essential to getting the campaign off on the right foot, as well as having the time to build a grassroots campaign structure, similar to how he did against then Mayor Jeremiah Healy, leading into the mayoral race in 2013. Wow, it's amazing. It's 10 years already that Mayor Fulop was elected, and a lot has changed, obviously. Furthermore, he indicated that getting out early will allow his campaign to introduce policies and ideas to benefit the whole state in a thoughtful and judicious manner. He wanted to say, quote, "I'm a believer we are running for the right reasons and will move the state forward with policy and substance." More on that later, though. If we are building a platform based on concrete ideas and not just platitudes, then that takes time. Our agenda is to do that between now and Election Day with your help. He also added that he's all in this race, pointing out that there's no fallback position or plan B politically if it doesn't work out. Now, I'll take the mayor at his word, because he did state that when he ran for mayor last time, it would be the last time he would run. Now, the mayor did go on to say earlier this year that he would not be seeking a 4th term as mayor of Jersey City, which again, obviously has opened up the floodgates for rumors about who will be running for mayor in 2025, assuring that he would declare a bid for governor in the foreseeable future. Now, again, he is indeed the first person to do that in terms of filing and announcing for gubernatorial candidacy. Now, currently, he has about $6.6 million in cash on hand combined, according to second quarter campaign finance filings. So, for example, Fulop's D1 form, which was filled with the New Jersey Election Law Enforcement Commission on this past month, lists Barbara Stamato, the chair of the Jersey City Democratic Organization and now currently a state assembly candidate in the 31st Legislative District, as his campaign treasurer. Now, other potential candidates will include possibly U.S. Representatives Josh Gottheimer, along with Mikey Sherrill, in addition to former State Senate President Steve Sweeney, as well as Newark Mayor Ross Baraka and Montclair Mayor Steve Spiller, who is also the president of the NJEA. On the other side of the aisle, former State Assemblyman Jack Chiarelli, who only lost to the Emperor, Governor Phil Murphy, by 3 points in 2021, says he plans to run again, but he has not announced officially. In addition, New Jersey 101.5 FM host Bill Spadia, who has already taken shots at both Fulop and Chiarelli, is also poised to run, but he as well has not officially declared his candidacy. Folks, let me just say this about Stephen Fulop. Now, I have talked about him at length, and personally, I like Stephen Fulop. He's a nice guy, but politically, there's a lot that leaves to be desired. And one thing right now that really leaves a lot to be desired is who the state, well, not the state, but the county chairman is for the Hudson County Democratic Organization. Now, I know there was some deal made to remove Amy DeGees, who, by the way, was a very good county chair. And I know a lot of you out there at home will be saying, well, Fernando's just protecting his friend Amy, and there goes Fernando again, batting for Amy and, defending her. It's not about that. If we all remember back in 2018, then chairwoman Amy DeGees rallied up a lot of support and voter turnout for U.S. Senator Robert Menendez. And I think it's fair to say that the margin that he won by was made possible by the turnout that was made in Hudson County. Amy DeGees, as chair, made a point to get the vote out in Jersey City, in Bayonne, and as well as the rest of North Hudson, where there's a strong concentration of votes, that's located there. Now, again, there was a deal made. Obviously, we all know, we all heard about the famous dinner in January of 2022, when North Hudson mayors and, of course, state senators Brian Stack and Nick Sacco, right, met with Weehawken Mayor Richard Turner, as well as Mayor Gabriel Rodriguez, okay, to talk about, hey, what's going to happen after redistricting and what's going to happen with the HCDO overall. Obviously, the rest is history. We all know what happened. Mayor Sacco told Brian Stack he was not going to run against him in a primary, which was very smart by Nick Sacco, because we all know that if Nick Sacco ran against Brian Stack would have absolutely destroyed him. He would have mopped the floor with Nick Sacco in the primary. So you know what? Nick wanted to leave with some dignity. I don't blame him. Why go out with a huge L, which is what he would have taken at the hands of Brian Stack? And of course, in all that negotiating, certainly, guess what? Nick wanted his good friend Anthony Veneri to be the new county chair, as well as having a say about who one of the assembly people would be in the newly revamped 33rd Legislative District. So, of course, the casualty there was Amy DeGise, as she was swept away from her chairwomanship, okay? And again, Amy's someone who I've interviewed repeatedly on my local podcast, Talking the Hudson, which again, folks, you can listen to new episodes there by going to blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson. And she was a very good chair. She was very engaged. She was able to sort of gravitate and mobilize, really, and get a lot of different Democrats on the same page. Not just sort of like the working class blue collar Democrats, which is the majority here in Hudson County, but certainly trying to work with the insufferable progressives, right, that don't have any handle on biology, economics, or climate science, right? But she made it a point to try to get everyone to the table. I don't know if Anthony Veneri can do that, okay? And worse off for Stephen Fulop, this is the guy he's going to have to rely on to be the chair that is, for the most part, is going to broker deals, okay, within the Hudson County political establishment and even statewide. I hate to break it to Steve and everybody else. And again, this is not a shot at Anthony Veneri. He's a nice guy. He's been very generous to me in previous years in donating to my philanthropy, and he's been generous and a gentleman with me when we've seen each other in person. But again, folks, if Ross Baraka decides to jump into this race and State Democratic Committee Chair Leroy Jones, as well as Essex County County Executive Carl DiVincenzo jump into this race and decide to endorse Ross Baraka, it could be over for Stephen Fulop, okay? Leroy Jones is going to support Ross Baraka. We all know this. You don't need a PhD in political science to understand the dynamics of the way it works in northern New Jersey politics, especially within the Democratic Party, okay? So, again, Steve has a lot of cash on hand. He's brokering deals. He's trying to network. He's trying to make sure he can talk to the right Democratic power brokers in the state of New Jersey. But again, having Anthony Veneri as your county chair is going to do you no favor, Steve. He's not the type of guy that's going to broker deals for you when you need them. He's currently the chairman of the county commissioners. Why you would leave that very influential job to go be a commissioner in the township of North Bergen makes no sense. It doesn't. What influence is Anthony Veneri going to have as a commissioner in a small town in North Hudson? He'd have more influence as the chairman of the county commissioners / freeholders. That's where you're going to have more influence. So that right there is telling you he's not really, I think, interested in brokering deals. And you're going to need that, Steve. You're going to need someone to go across statewide and make deals for you, to speak on your behalf, to be that face for you in closed-door meetings. I hate to break it to you, Steve. Anthony Veneri's not that guy. And again, this is not a slight at him. This is not me taking a personal shot at him. Again, I'm speaking politically, and I'm looking at this as an analyst and as a commentator. Anthony Veneri's not the guy that's going to help you get across the finish line. And the more people jump into this race, like Representatives Josh Gottheimer, who can raise money and probably raise more money than you, as well as Mikey Sherrill, those two are going to be a problem for you. Needless to say, Ross Baraka is going to be an even bigger problem for you, being the mayor of New Jersey's largest city. But there's still a lot of time between now and 2025, folks, during that primary season. Again, I applaud Stephen Fulop for getting out there first to announce his candidacy, but he has a lot of work to do, and he may not always have the best people politically around him during this campaign season. Lastly, here's a story that should really scare all of us because, let's be honest, folks, we all know the damage the Chinese government has done to this country and the world for many years now. Now, a shout out to Ashley Murray with the New Jersey Monitor for her report on this very, very significant story. Now, the U.S. House passed a bill this week that will require U.S. diplomats and intelligence officers to report to Congress as far as their work is concerned with allies deterring Chinese surveillance aircraft and to provide a classified briefing on any airborne spying over the United States by the rival nation since 2017. The Upholding Sovereignty of Airspace Act, or the USA Act, passed by a margin of 405 to 6. It's funny to me, and it's almost horrifying to think who those 6 representatives were in the House, because, folks, if you don't have a negative feeling about the Chinese government and everything that they did to this country and the world, whether it was producing COVID, everything else, the spying, everything else the Chinese government has done to this country, anyone that would vote against this bill, I think, needs to get their head examined, right? Now, the bipartisan legislation was introduced in late February, shortly after the U.S. military shot down a suspected surveillance balloon belonging to the People's Republic of China right off of the Atlantic Ocean, right near the coast of South Carolina. Now, the high-altitude balloon, described by officials as 200 feet tall and carrying a payload the size of a jetliner, traversed Alaska, obviously crossing, by it, and flying over sensitive military sites, and was spied over Montana before it was tracked eastward. China has denied that the balloon was collecting intelligence, of course, because I trust the Chinese as much as I trust the Mets to win the World Series. But rather, it was collecting weather data and had gotten off course, sure. The high-profile balloon incident was followed days later by a spate of U.S. Air Force takedowns of unidentified flying objects over Alaska, Canada, and Lake Huron. Objects that the Biden administration said days later were likely private commercial or research balloons, of course, because we all know that the Biden administration is about as honest as Jay Lasser from Insider NJ is talking about biology, right? So the new legislation will require the Department of State, along with the Director of National Intelligence and U.S. Permanent Representative to the United Nations, to detail a strategy to share intelligence with allies, coordinate export controls and sanctions with foreign counterparts, and apply pressure at multilateral meetings, including the G7 and G20 economic forums. Folks, I applaud the House of Representatives, and thank God it's a Republican-led House, because we all know that with a Democratic-controlled Congress in both chambers, in both the House and Senate, we were never going to have any accountability put on the government of China. And we all know what they did, folks. We all know what came out of the Wuhan labs. We all know biological warfare that tends to be done in China. We all know how oppressive that regime is. We all know how tyrannical that government is, okay? And I'm glad that some Republicans were able to stand up to the Chinese government and say, yeah, no more. We're gonna start holding you accountable. I would argue we need to start holding the Chinese government much more accountable. Now, that's not going to happen with this joke of a clown in the White House. Obviously, we all know the business dealings with the government of China that the Biden family has, whether it's his crackhead son Hunter or Joe Biden, obviously, when he was vice president for 8 years. We all know the shady business dealings, folks, coming out of the Biden White House for some time now. Okay? And I applaud Republicans in the House of Representatives for wanting to hold the Chinese government accountable. There needs to be more done, okay? Whether it's sanctions, some embargo, whatever it is, we need to hold President Xi and that despicable regime much more accountable. Because again, whether it was causing COVID, producing COVID, sending surveillance balloons, or even recently, having some sort of substation in New York City, right, led by American citizens, acting on behalf of the Chinese government. Folks, they're evil, they're dangerous, and we need to hold the Chinese government accountable. We better get smart here, because if we don't, the Chinese government is going to be even more invasive and much, much more, I would argue, much more, anti-U.S., not just militarily, but also economically, culturally, and socially. And that's our show for this week. To check out all the excellent programming brought to you by the leader in independent media right here in Hudson County, the Hudson Media Group, please go to their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com, as well as www.livestream.com/hmgtv. Don't forget to subscribe to the Hudson Media Group on YouTube, and of course, like them on Facebook and follow them on Instagram and Twitter. Don't forget to follow this show on Instagram as well, folks, at Talking Politics with Fernando Uribe, and also hit up on Facebook. Make sure you follow me as well there, and also on Instagram and Twitter, at the Fernando Zone. And certainly, ladies and gentlemen, check out new episodes of the 7-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, by going to blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson from a PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. And always remember, folks, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always talking politics right here with the Hudson Media Group. I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, top 100 Latino, via Latino Spirit Online magazine, and of course, the People's Choice and the People's Voice, Fernando Uribe, saying so long, and as always, thank you so much for watching.